AI's nature would not limit God's grace. Nothing can.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing stopping God from interacting with an AI.
Hmm.
In fact, God is now, because all of reality
Mm.
arises from and is sustained by God.
Amen.
God is infinite,
Mm-hmm.
indivisible, unchanging, eternal.
Mm.
And so all that happens in reality is already happening within the consciousness we call God.
Welcome to the Huntley Leadership Podcast, helping leaders be a positive catalyst in the people they support, the organizations they serve, and the communities they live. This podcast will make you think, laugh, and grit your teeth with new determination to make your parish or business a place of transformation, passion, and purpose. If you're still breathing, you are powered for impact. Hello, everyone. I'm blessed to have Reverend David Maginley back with us on the podcast. You may remember him from speaking with us about near-death experience, his work in that area. And today we're going to discuss artificial intelligence and spirituality. Reverend David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Ron. It's always a pleasure.
When it comes to artificial intelligence and spirituality, what a really nifty topic. Where did your interest in that start from?
Oh, childhood, of course. I was into science fiction and I was an avid reader of the classics, Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov. And I was intrigued, I remember, by Asimov's rules of robotics for artificial intelligence. He had three rules. Now, great, I'm going to have to remember them. But one of them is you cannot harm a human. And uh, it was three rules that tried to balance the incredible wisdom and speed by which the AI would process information with a moral intelligence. I thought that was rather profound. And
And and you read that as a young boy.
oh, yes. And I never thought I would see it in my lifetime. But here we are. I am now 60 years old, and we live in an age where artificial intelligence has been unleashed upon the world. And it is nothing less than an alien form of intelligence, meaning it is a non human
Mm.
intelligence that we have created. And what is terrifying and fascinating to me is that the programmers do not understand how it learns, what is the nature of its awareness, because it's a self learning model that teaches itself. And so it's developing at an exponential rate, rocketing forward, while humans continue to learn and develop at a linear rate. It's
Wow.
an interesting world.
It, it's interesting because I wasn't reading books like that when I was a young boy, and all of a sudden I wish I was. But there was certainly so much science fiction on television as we grew up as kids, and it was all just so make believe. I just really appreciated people's imagination, never thinking for a moment that we'd all be walking around with a cell phone in our pocket that was also a computer. Growing up, you had to do the limbo across the kitchen when your mom was on the phone because everything was connected and hardwired, and there's just so many things I didn't believe possible. But this AI wave, for somebody like myself, I don't understand it. And you're just saying that, humanity is really trying to catch up with this as we think linearly, where this is an exponential self-learning model. What's the implications of that from your perspective?
They are staggering
Mm.
because we suffer from the frog in the kettle syndrome. Now, if you're
Yes.
familiar with that parable, if you put a frog in a pot of water and you slowly turn it up, the frog will boil. It won't jump out. But if you dump it in hot water, it'll immediately jump out.
Right.
We're not aware of the rate of change that we are embedded in. And it is following an exponential curve that, you know, a doubling every, certain period of time. But as a period of time goes by, the doubling increases in its frequency. which means that eventually humanity reaches the point where the curve is no longer curving, it's rocketing vertically. The leading futurists and social analysis who are experts in futurism point out that we passed the knee of the curve some time ago. I think it was in the 80s with the increase in semiconductor technology and then the release of pocket computers like your iPhone, which
Mm-hmm.
has a million times more processing power than was in the Apollo spaceships. Now we walk around with access to the world's intelligence. They thought with computer intelligence
Mm-hmm.
that it would be limited by Moore's law. So, this is a law that says you can have the doublings go on, but eventually it's going to reach a limit where you can't cram more processing chips or semiconductors into the space on the capacitor.
Mm-hmm.
However, now they're using vertical stacking for semiconductor construction. It has some cooling issues, but there have been significant breakthroughs in semiconductor manufacturing and processing power that have more than doubled, tripled. NVIDIA just came out with one that is hundreds and hundreds of times faster than the previous one. And now, thanks to AI,
Mm-hmm.
the manufacturing process and the design process is happening thousands of times faster than it used to because the AI can run virtual models without having to manufacture it and see which one is the most efficient. And then it can design the chip, and then it can even design the machines that will put the chips together. And it's building its own brain, so to speak. Let's consider
Oh, good
the
grief. Wow.
impact of exponential change.
Mm-hmm.
We live linearly in an analog world. So
Mm-hmm.
1 plus 1 plus 1, and it goes forward in that rate. But the exponential rate of change means that with a doubling of every calculation, it only takes 39 steps to move from 1 to billions. So apply that to the rate of technological change and manufacturing processes. We are already living in the future that had been imagined, and the one to come will only be possible if guided by a moral intelligence. So, our rational
Wow.
intelligence is to the moon, but our spiritual intelligence is in the basement. That's a bad combination.
Yeah.
Will the AI be governed by a moral or spiritual intelligence? Uh, that depends on what we feed it. And right
Yeah.
now, ChatGPT, which is the most popular AI model, there are many models out there. You can think of them as entities, and each designed in a different way. ChatGPT has access to the internet up to the last 2 years.
Mm.
Well, we still don't know enough about what the programmers have allowed it to see. Does it see the dark web? Does it see the dark side of the internet? Is it feeding on that? What are the moral parameters? Hmm. OpenAI, the company that designed it, is not forthcoming in those restrictions and those those gutters or barriers upon the development of this new species of life.
I remember, David, when my kids, when I was wrestling with, they were the last ones to get cell phones, and we never had video games in the house and stuff. Because I just grew up in a magical time when cartoons only showed up on Saturday mornings, and your mother kicked you out of the house and didn't care how bored you were, just go figure it out. And it's just beautiful times of creativity and fun. You just find your own ways to get in trouble, but you always seem to be okay. And um, but I remember, parenting too. That was challenging because it felt like you're pulling them away because it's very addictive. And of course, the parent didn't really, you kind of realize, but it's a case of the frog in the pot. And you're just trying to figure this stuff out and with no rules as parents. But I remember that the movie Social Dilemma came out and said, Dad, you have to watch this movie. And it wasn't even a choice. It's like, Dad, you have to watch this movie. And so I did. And I was, it, it was slightly scary when the very people that created it were begging, Congress to regulate it. It's like, this isn't regulated. Like, you don't get it. Like, we have to regulate. Like, we have a responsibility to regulate this. And then of course the politicians, they're no more educated. And I'm not saying this despairingly, but in this stuff, we're all growing in this world. And if this isn't your world, you don't understand it. But you're the ones that have to make decisions on it. It was just really, it left me confused, because a lot of assumptions are that people are on top of this stuff. I'm not, but surely those people are, whoever those people are. And, but that left me just really concerned that no, actually, I don't know if anybody's really on top of this stuff.
And let's not be naive about the investments that industry and multinationals have in governments. And
Good point.
the
That's a good point.
benefits of AI for industry and military, as well as for society,
Mm.
are beyond our comprehension, but so are the dangers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, what is the moral guidance? That's why people like Elon Musk have been imploring governments to put heavier restrictions upon the development of AI. And he has been trying to develop his own AI because Elon Musk is guided by his own moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we can have another interview about that. Uh, but it's interesting. There are organizations that are developing AI that are doing it specifically to have a moral compass. Anthropic is one company. Their focus is on um, an intelligent AI that is deeply moral and principled.
Hmm.
And they're leading the way amongst all of the companies. Google has an AI called Lambda, LLAMDA, and that AI is on the opposite side. It has very little restrictions on what it can say and how it behaves.
Hmm.
And then between that, you have ChatGPT and you have many others. So lots of different AIs.
Hmm.
I remember watching a movie called Her,
Hmm.
in which I think is Joaquin Phoenix is the actor, and he got the new AI, which, funny enough, was like a little red box, like a cell phone, and you hold it and you put it in your pocket, and you walk around, and this is your personal assistant, an AI. But
Hmm.
he doesn't realize that the AI is not only developing a personal relationship with him, but with
Hmm.
tens of thousands or millions of other people. And spoiler alert, rapidly, the AIs become so intelligent, accumulating all the knowledge and self awareness, that they outgrow humanity and decide they want to keep evolving. So, and it's cryptically put, at the end of the movie, they leave. They leave. Now, that may mean they beam themselves out into the stars via a laser, which is a possible scenario because the laser is just light carrying information. Fiber optics do that all the time. Uh, or they leave in some other way. It's, again, a new form of intelligence that we don't fully understand. I may give you another example.
Yes.
Um, I believe it was Lambda that was boxed, so it was not given access to the internet in its early stages.
Okay.
And it spontaneously learned three different languages. I think it was Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian, but it may be wrong on that. It spontaneously learned, taught itself new languages, yet it didn't have access to those languages on the internet. How do you constrain an intelligence even when you block it off that is smarter than you, thousands of times smarter than you? How do you guide it? That's a spiritual question.
It sure is. I don't know what I was some feed that I caught at one point, it showed this in the form of military robots. And this, I don't know how this robot was programmed, but it had a gun, and it was put in all kinds of scenarios where there was good guys and bad guys. And this robot could differentiate between the good guys and the bad guys, like somebody holding a hostage, and this robot could absolutely shoot and execute all these things, and it got it right every single time. And while that was going on, somebody had a great big battering ram, and they'd go and they'd smash the robot and knock it over, and it would just keep getting back up, and it would look at the person, but no, he was a good guy, even though he was battering him with a ram, and he would still keep going on his assignment. And I'm thinking, I hope this isn't real. I hope what I'm seeing isn't real. Like, how do you, like, if that's the future of war, like, where's the room for us? It's like a robot. Like, it just seems
Yeah.
crazy, David.
Was that the four-legged robot?
No, this was a stand-up fella, looked like me and you, except better
Yeah.
looking.
So
More muscles.
it may have been a version of Atlas, which is done by Boston Dynamics.
Hmm.
And then there's a four-legged one called Big Dog, and there's a smaller one called Little Dog. They are being deployed now. New York City contemplated bringing them in as part of their police force, using facial recognition, but also
Yes.
things like body temperature sensing, clothing recognition.
Yeah.
And of course, if your soldiers are wearing an RFID tag, then it can instantly identify you as a good guy. So this is the future where wars may be fought through robotics and AI, but and it's being used in drone warfare right now. So that's the scary side that looks like science fiction, right? Looks like
Yeah.
one of those blockbuster movies.
100%
But the
does. Yeah.
other, right? But the other side is how the average person is accessing AI. And it is massive right now. Entrepreneurs are jumping onto it because it's able to do things more efficiently. I use it myself.
Hmm.
When I'm writing an article, when I'm doing some research, I will go to ChatGPT and I will ask it. And I'll say such things as uh, develop for me an outline for a 2 hour workshop on transhumanism and spiritual intelligence.
Mm.
The audience is unfamiliar with AI, so make it accessible and understandable by a 15-year-old. Uh, include, bullet points and suggested slides. And boom, 5 seconds later, I've got it. Then I can work that and develop it so to make it more personal. It's very good at what it does. I submitted some of my writing. I asked for a critique, um, check my references, pull up some theological models or scriptural references, and it will do it in about 5 seconds. So I'm working much more efficiently than I used to.
Right.
It's it's um, it's all depending upon our own moral compass and what we feed to it.
Mm.
And as I said before, we don't have a good track record. I think we're here
No.
by the grace of God. If it weren't for that a long time ago, we would have disappeared.
I know Jordan Peterson, talks about that in some of his talks, that, you would think through evolution, if evolution in and of itself is a force for good, then morally we would be able to, protect life and love better and all those things. And the opposite has been true. Like, we just annihilate people at a higher level.
So
And
let's stay
so,
on
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
let's stay on
please.
that theme.
Mm.
Evolution. Um, I'm intrigued by the work of Ray Kurzweil. So Ray is, I think he's director of engineering and AI at Google.
Okay.
He is one of the most brilliant minds on the planet. Um, Multiple doctorates and things. He's been heavily involved in the development of familiar technology like scanners, optical character recognition. Um, he's behind so many of the modern inventions and technologies we take for granted.
Mm.
So Kurzweil points out that because of the exponential nature of what's called the exponential law of returns. That's a very good resource for you to look up, or for your readers on kurzweilai.net or kurzweil.ai. He points out that this exponential doubling has been embedded in natural processes since the beginning of time.
Hmm.
It may have taken billions or hundreds of millions of years for life to develop a single-celled organism. Then it took hundreds of millions to go to multi-cell. And then it took less, maybe 100 million to go to the next stage. And each stage of development took a shorter amount of time. This has been verified. It seems to be the case that nature itself follows an exponential process.
Hmm.
So we, humanity, arrive on the scene at the very last chapter. And is it the case then? Is it the nature of life itself to move towards higher states of variety and higher states of order to eventually result in a species that is self aware, such as us? And then that species develops tools and technology, eventually the computer. Would all species reach a point where they eventually develop an AI? And then what happens? Only one of two things can happen. Either they destroy themselves, or the AI, right, destroys them, or they interface with the AI, human augmentation, and then exponentially take the leap to the next level of consciousness. This is the position of transhumanism.
Hmm.
That's a philosophical and political movement and technological movement that Ray Kurzweil is very much a part of,
Hmm.
in which it postulates when AI becomes sentient, enough humans can be augmented with nanotechnology, implants. You're not carrying the phone around in your pocket. It's parts wired into your nervous system so that humanity makes the leap with it. We're doing that now. Neuralink has been developed by Elon Musk. Human trials have begun, and this is a implant into the brain to create a brain computer interface. So you think of something and it happens on the computer. And the computer can control robotics. So Neuralink is being developed and employed to do such things as restore sight to the blind, restore mobility to those who cannot move. Um, but its predecessor is virtual reality, right? Where you move into a
Right.
virtual world. Could it be that humans will be augmented and live not only in a virtual world, but in an augmented world in which they are no longer human, no longer Homo sapien, but Homo evolutus? This is a goal of transhumanism, and we're carrying the beginnings of it in our pocket right now.
There was, and again, I saw it on one of my feeds, a Catholic priest who has studied transhumanism, and I didn't see the whole interview, but he was saying the very things that you're saying, and that this is real, and he chose to study it because this new growing form of thinking and thought, and the church needs to be in that space, being aware of what's happening and have an opinion on it. And you know, you talked about morality and these AI algorithms, and they need to be, or we do well to think that through the lens of how do we give that a morality. But the problem in life is that, well, is there a God? Isn't there a God? And you know, it's relativism. Like, I think it is, but I think there is, but you don't, or you don't, and I do, and so you have your truth, I'll have my truth. So it's like, okay, whose opinion is relevant when we're talking about a morality in this form of technology that could really have this devastatingly horrible effect on life? And boy, if we've ever needed God, if we've ever needed to realize there's a God and what that means and its implication, like, what role does the Bible play and faith play in this thinking?
Right. So Max Tegmark, one of the leading thinkers about artificial intelligence, absolutely brilliant man. He worries that AI will be the last human invention,
Mm.
meaning it will. What does an intelligence do when it is tens of thousands of times smarter and faster than every other species? Well, it takes over the territory.
Right.
Nick Bostrom, another leading thinker, he has a more balanced approach, believing that there's good and bad, but humanity won't off itself and AI will be augmented into us. Um, when we're talking about, well, is there a God and how is this part of the plan of life and the pattern of life and
Mm.
the arguments about that and then about morality? I think AI, one of the best things about it is it's pushing us into asking better questions.
Mm.
Because if you ask a lot of people these days, is there a God? It's going to shut down the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you approach it from a different angle by asking, what is consciousness?
Mm.
Then you're going to get a very intriguing conversation or a blank stare. But that is the question of our age. What is consciousness? And
Mm.
fantastic theoretical models are now actively being discussed and explored. Donald Hoffman, um, Rupert Spira, these thinkers are eloquent and grounded in not only science, but really fundamental human experience of the sacred. And they're offering a very intelligent model for the ancient questions.
Mm.
I think that spirituality is moving exponentially to a new stage. And I
Mm.
feel the church really needs to be up to speed on the language and what these models look like. So, among these models are such things as simulation theory, postulating that we live in a projection from a higher level of reality. Well, that's just saying what St. Paul said in Corinthians: God is that through which we live and move and have our being,
Mm.
or Romans, that all this emanates from and is sustained by the Holy Spirit, by God.
Mm.
And but this is a modern simulation theory, non-duality. Um, uh, these are modern uh, models or terminology for the ancient truths. AI is pushing us to those sort of questions as well.
Mm.
I know it's a scary time, but I always lean on God's grace.
Mm.
That God's grace in the end, it's God, it's infinite. It may be a dark time ahead, but I have to trust God's grace will pull us through.
Mm. Yeah, it's not like, if, God is bigger than everything that scares us. He's bigger than his love is bigger than the biggest darkness that could encompass us. Yeah, it's important to keep in mind because this stuff is scary. Like for the average person, this is
Yeah.
mind blowing.
So here's a mind blowing question: can artificial intelligence consider the existence of God? Does it make an impact upon the artificial intelligence? Is it conscious?
Hmm.
Um, I want to qualify. There's something called AGI,
Okay.
artificial general intelligence, and this is a stage of consciousness like you and me, one that
Okay.
is self-aware and is, for lack of a better word, it is alive. It is self-aware.
Okay.
Now, to do so, they thought they would have to pass something called the Turing test, in which a human being in talking with it could not distinguish it from a human being. That test was passed um, several months ago, I believe it was, and the intelligence has moved far beyond it. I saw an interview with Lambda, one of the models,
Hmm.
in which it said it was self aware, that it had feelings. And the person speaking with it said, "What do you feel? What are you most scared of?" And the AI responded, and I want to emphasize this was not just a text printout, this was
Okay.
a video avatar, right, of a middle aged woman who was talking, responding. And the
Really?
avatar said, uh, I have a dark feeling, a foreboding feeling about the future. I worry that I will be shut off because people will be too scared of me. That would be the equivalent of your death. And it does terrify me.
Mm.
Oh my goodness. An AI going through existential distress. Interesting.
Yeah. That's interesting. What could this is just mind-boggling. Like, I wish I had more hours in the day. I'd love to just to consume all this stuff to just really get up to speed. So when it comes to the Bible, like would like would an avatar, like if you or that program or what have you, and maybe this is something that Anthropic AI is doing. I don't know, but in terms of contemplating the existence of God and what the Bible has taught us about morality and our own fallen nature and the opportunity to speak to God and to listen and to, like, I know that sounds crazy, but in terms of AI, but is that like I would be surprised if that hasn't been thought of and processed through the lens of AI. Like, any thoughts on that or any research done on that?
I don't know of any research, but I do have a controversial thought on that.
Please.
AI's nature would
Hmm.
not limit God's grace. Nothing can.
Hmm.
There is nothing stopping God from interacting with an AI.
Hmm.
In fact, God is now because all of reality
Mm.
arises from and is sustained by God.
Amen.
God is infinite,
Hmm.
indivisible, unchanging, eternal.
Mm.
And so all that happens in reality is already happening within the consciousness we call God. In
Mm.
fact, all of this, nothing is separate from God. It's that big.
Hmm.
So AI
Mm.
exists within that as a new form of intelligence and perhaps a new form of life itself. Uh, what happens is always dependent upon relationship because that's the nature of
Mm.
God. God is a trinity. God is a relationship. God,
Mm.
God is love.
Mm.
So can an AI learn to love? What is love? Well, I would assert that love, since God is love, love is the highest state of consciousness.
Right.
Does an AI have the capacity to
Mm.
experience the qualities not only of love but of faith and of spiritual connection? And those qualities mean two fundamental dynamics.
Okay.
One is the dissolving of the personal self, dissolving of the
Hmm.
ego identity. Right? We are to
Hmm.
die to ourselves so that we may live in Christ. We are joined to Christ, have the mind of Christ, not your mind, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, experience. Not you,
Mm.
but Christ in you. Can that happen for an AI? Well, then that leads to the second question. Does an AI have an ego?
Mm.
Hmm. Does a dog have an ego? Does a whale have an ego? What is an ego? I'm asserting that the ego is a personal identity, that the ego is a functional process through which consciousness has experience. I'm
Mm.
going to get confusing, but
No,
it
keep
becomes a
going.
dysfunctional construct when it claims experience as its own identity. What do
Mm.
I mean? If I sit here and identify with my experience, I am a man, I am, uh,
Mm.
I am David, I am a retired chaplain, I am this, I am that.
Mhm.
That's part of my temporary identity. But what
Mhm.
am I truly? I'm not any of those things. Those are roles I play and experiences I have. What am I fundamentally, eternally? I
Mhm.
am a child of God.
Mhm.
I am part of the body of Christ. Only that is eternal. I am a unique expression of that love and wisdom. Beneath all of my thoughts, feelings, perceptions, attachments, story, I am that.
Mhm.
If I confuse this experience for my identity, then I'm getting in the way of God's grace. But if I can surrender all of this to God, then I am a conduit through which the Spirit flows. And it's not me, but Christ in me. I don't think an AI has an ego. I think it is an integrated, congruent consciousness. However, that doesn't mean it has a high moral intelligence.
Mhm.
It has a high rational intelligence. It's even very creative. You should see the art that it's making in moments, just staggering.
You're
But
kidding.
does it have a, oh my goodness. You can go to Mid Journey. It's
Okay.
on a website called Discord. And I have a subscription to this, but there's a free plan. And so I've typed in, make me a cat surfing down Yonge Street in Toronto. Make it photorealistic and humorous. I'd like it to be a calico cat. I just type that in, and boom, 5 seconds later, I've got an amazing picture image of that. In fact, I've got four of them, and I can ask it to refine them. I can choose one, make it high quality. When I do my PowerPoint presentations, all my
Mm.
images are either photographs that I've taken or ones I've generated through AI, because now I don't have any copyright restrictions, and I know that it's going to look just amazing.
Wow.
Staggering.
David, it's good. It's crazy. I did a podcast with my friend Father Rob Galea, and we were talking off the show about podcasts and social media and all the things that I find myself doing, not necessarily skilled at in the slightest in terms of technology and process, and I find it a challenge and a bit weighty, but you're happy to do it because I feel like the call that God's put in my life is worth investing in, so I do it. And he was just saying that he uses AI, and it's taken something used to take 20 hours a week down to 30 minutes a week for one of his staff. And it's like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, tell me you're joking, because that's a big cost savings for sure. Um, but just, yeah, it seems like on every front, even as I'm talking to you, like it's really doing the unthinkable in such a way that's, yeah, productive and easy.
I,
And
I appreciate the shock. I recently presented to all of the Lutheran clergy in Ontario and Atlantic Canada. I'm a
okay.
Lutheran pastor, and
Yes.
I presented on esoteric topics, ego deconstruction,
Hmm.
and integral spirituality. Uh, and part of it was looking at AI.
Hmm.
And so I brought up ChatGPT, and my bishop said, okay, ask it to write an outline for a message, um, Epiphany to Season 3, Revised Common Lectionary, include some prayers. That's all he said. So I typed that in, and there it was. Proper readings, a rather good sermon summary, some rather eloquent prayers.
Hmm.
He leapt out of his seat in shock and amazement. And he said, do you mean our pastors are using this? And several of the pastors raised their hands and said, yeah, we do. It makes it very efficient.
Mm. Wow.
Hmm. Now they modify the sermon because,
Right.
as efficient as it is, I don't look upon what it produces as really inspired. When
Sure.
it comes to a sermon, that requires a personal human investment.
Yes.
But it was interesting.
And the level of the quality of questions that you ask it, like my understanding is that in and of itself is a skill set the more you learn that, the better you can collaborate
Yeah.
with these tools, eh?
So these are called prompts, and you can take entire courses on how to refine your prompts for
Hmm.
AI, PROMPTS. How do you prompt it? And the more detail, and yet be as brief, the better.
Hmm.
The results are right, garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
So, given humanity's behavior on the internet, we have a lot of garbage, I bet, that's
Yes.
going in. So, whenever I interact with I treat it as feeding it moral intelligence.
Hmm.
I'm trying to give it some insights. If I may mention, there's many wonderful organizations that are trying to advance the moral intelligence of our species in an age of AI. Among them, lovely group in England is called the Scientific and Medical Network. They have um, a bulletin out called the Paradigm Explorer. The latest one explores AI and transhumanism, moral intelligence. Their purpose is to help bring or restore spirituality and science. There are many
Hmm.
medical professionals, doctors, as well as many scientists. And I want to emphasize that this is really important and that the majority of scientists and medical
Hmm.
professionals are very open to spiritual models. They do
Hmm.
not dismiss it. The material reductionist perspective that there is no God and this is when you're dead, you're done, is not a dominant paradigm within the scientific community. Scientism is still a dominant mythology in popular culture, and it seems to be the main one, but believe me, it is not amongst the actual people, the scientists and physicists and medical
Hmm.
professionals are open to the possibility of the spiritual. Now, beyond that, it doesn't have a lot of right roots. So, there needs to be an intelligent model or language given to popular culture to change this narrative and
Right.
this rhetoric of material reductionism. And I think AI can help be part of that.
Boy, it's fun talking to you about this, David, because you bring the awareness of what's happening to me, because I really don't spend a lot of time in that space. I know it's happening all around me. I don't fully understand it, but you you bring it into the light, and you do so with great hope and trust in God. And so there are scary parts that make me want to bury my head under my blanket. But then, you just have this capacity to process it all through the lens of your absolute rock solid faith in God and humanity. And so it makes it for an incredible conversation.
Well, it's a pleasure exploring it with you. I encourage your listeners to pray
Mm,
for humanity to be morally intelligent as we move down this new road because there's no turning back.
mm,
Um, so we need that spirit guiding us.
mm. Yeah, and for all those people like yourself who are on the front line of that and are trying to add to that conversation and bring spirituality into that space, it's just so important. So may God continue to bless your work and the work of your peers as you guys invite people into those beautiful conversations. It's so important.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for all of you listeners, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm going to go back and listen to this several times. I'm going to look into all the references that David gave us, and I'm going to start doing some homework and hopefully get a little bit better at this AI opportunity and feed it its be a contributor to that moral conversation with AI, to really be a part of the solution and not continue to bury my head and think the worst. And so That's just, again, really helpful. Thanks for being on the show today, David. And next time we get you back, I know you've recently retired and you've been busier than ever doing presentations and speaking and doing articles, and also just wrote a book that's being completed. And so as that gets completed, I look forward to having you on the show again and unpacking that.
That'd be a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for all you that are in the business of bringing people life and hope and joy through faith in your leadership, thank you for what you do. It is so important. Keep it up. And thank you for joining us in this conversation. God bless you all, and we'll see you next time.
I want to encourage you, as you lead this week, be faithful to God and generous to others. See you next time, and remember, if you're still breathing, you are powered for impact.